Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Last Tech Podcast. My guest today is a staff engineer at Slack. She is a prolific speaker and killer content creator. She has a very serious background as a React and GraphQL developer, but her dev jokes are decidedly unserious, very funny, and I just got to say that the first time I ever met you, Shruti, I thought, this is my friend for life, no doubt. I am so lucky to know you and so lucky to have you on the show today. Please welcome Shruti. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Eve. Oh my God, mutual feelings. First time I met you, I was like, oh, she's my inspiration. Because I read your GraphQL book and I was there in your tutorial when you were teaching GraphQL at PayPal.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's so awesome. I want to teach like that. And then we met in person. I was like, oh, she's awesome.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. I felt the same way. And you gave me a little tour around PayPal and it was so fun. And you showed me all the good spots for the good snacks
There's
and
only
drinks.
two. I showed you both the spots.
Okay. Well, you made it seem like there were more. It seemed like a richer path than that. That's so funny. I love it. So you're in Seattle now. This is exciting. How
Yes.
long have you been there now?
2 months now.
Okay.
And very excited to be here.
Yeah.
I moved here from Bay Area 2 months ago.
Cool.
Weather here is very different from Bay Area. Super wet.
Yeah.
Little sunshine. But I love it.
Yeah. It's going to hit this period of time in the summer where you're going to think this is how the weather always is here, and it's going to be awesome. My friend moved there in August and she had some weeks of great weather and then it immediately changed for her. But at the very beginning, she was stoked. But a beautiful city, very close to mountains and all those things. So
Yeah, definitely very nature friendly. I love it.
I love it. Cool. Well, tell me, my friend, a little bit about how you got started in web development. You were a computer engineering major, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so getting started with web development kind of was very interesting because I was still in my second year of undergrad and my dad had his own like real estate business when we had first moved to Canada. So he asked me if, as an engineer, I could design his website. And I was like, sure, Dad.
Yeah, probably.
No idea how to do it. And I found Wix and it was such an easy solution. It was really fun to do. And so I created his website and learned a little bit of like, I had known HTML earlier. I had taken a course. So learned a little bit of like how to deploy a website, what hosting is. And that was really fun. And then in my first internship as a software engineer, I actually ended up in a job where I also had to make a website. So at this time I used Drupal because WordPress was not for me and I was too cool for WordPress. So I ended up using Drupal, which was really fun because I like the first time I was exposed to web development was through like HTML and JavaScript and CSS. And then on the other side is like the spectrum of content management system, which takes care of everything for you. So it makes that development cycle very easy. And I think a lot of people, when they think about putting up their website, they think about like HTML, CSS and how to do that. So I use that kind of like Drupal CMS system to create websites for smaller businesses as well, just like my dad's who could actually maintain it themselves. So I just had to create the website for them and they would take care of like adding new content, posts, blogs, whatever they wanted to from there on. So I created a company called World Web Warriors, WWW.
I love it. Amazing.
Which did the same thing, like created websites for small businesses. And as I got more exposure to it, I learned the powers of JavaScript. And very late in my career, well, not very late in my career, after graduating from college, I got my first job as a web developer. And then I learned React. Oh my God, React was hard. React and Redux combined was hard. Yeah. And then somebody threw me into Angular, which, oh my God. So that's how I got
Which
started.
made React feel like easy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
So been doing web development for the last 9 to 10 years, I think. I don't even know. And it's been so much fun. So now I'm focusing heavily on React And I have totally forgotten what Angular is.
Yeah, it's gone now. It was scrubbed from your memory. That's
People
so
are going to
funny.
hate me for this.
No, I just think it's interesting how, yeah, you kind of jumped into that in an entrepreneurial way. That's super cool. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know about WWW, the business. That's awesome. How did that differ from the curriculum you were taking at school? Like, what types of things were you learning there?
Yeah, it was so interesting because I feel like the work that I've been doing since graduating has nothing to do with what I learned at work.
Yeah.
The only thing that's common is actually data structures and algorithms course, which is useful for lead code interviews.
And then
That
never
too.
again. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you get in, you don't need that. So I feel like that like engineering degree is kind of useless. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, it helped me get here. So, but the curriculum that I studied at school was very different from what we actually use at work. I think web development in general at the time when I was in school was not taught. So everything we learned has been at the job, like JavaScript specifically. I actually got started with C, and C is so hard. And then I learned C++. Oh my God. Ugh, demons. Demons, those languages.
Demons. You learned a lot, though, I'm sure, about stuff you don't want to use anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, about stuff I don't remember.
It's in there somewhere. We could probably pull it out at some point.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So you got into React kind of on the job after you'd worked with more kind of vanilla JavaScript stuff.
Yeah.
And then from there, you became this incredible speaker on all things React. And weren't you part of that React 18 working group too?
Yeah.
What was
that
that
was a
like?
really fun experience. Yeah, it was a really fun experience. I think if I remember correctly, you referred me through Michael to get into this. I think it was you.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go.
It's all coming back together.
So much love. Yes.
So much love.
It was such a fun like process. So I was actually very intimidated when I entered the working group because I thought I'm not an expert. I don't know what I'm talking about. But you know, the group of people, they were very nice. And specifically, I remember the React core team's idea and the principle of no stupid questions. And especially like if you have a question, it's likely the fault of the documentation and not explaining it well instead of, you know, like fault in your understanding. So I found that as very liberating, and especially like asking questions that may seem simple or trivial. I had a really good time. I think I learned a lot specifically and through that while creating like blog posts on what's new in React 18 or like what is automatic batching or what's concurrent rendering. I think I learned a lot about like React itself just outside of React 18. So for me, I feel like all in all it was a really great experience. I would totally do that again. I think it was such an empathetic learning experience that I've never experienced before. And I kind of strive to create that working environment for people in the future as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think the no bad questions thing is really important because it can feel overwhelming, especially when the people who work on React or work on whatever you're talking about are so immersed in it every single day. And then an outsider's perspective is really important too, to be like, hey, this makes no sense, or hey, I am seeing it this way, is that right? And I think that was really cool to get some people involved because the content you created, for example, after that was so approachable in a way that I don't think would have existed without kind of that that collaboration. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, there was one specific thread I remember, which was, I believe, was started by Sylvia. I could be butchering her name. I think it was about explain me like I'm 5, and it was all the things of React, and it was so good. And I remember one of the things that was explained there was concurrent rendering and automatic batching. Oh my God, like explaining something like you're 5 is such a great way of understanding a new concept and like explaining to somebody. I've been using that technique ever since to kind of understand and write blog posts as well in anything I do, like even in AI. So it's been really helpful. I think that was a great learning experience. And if anybody's interested, that thread, we'll link it. It's great thread.
Totally. I'm going to make a note to do that right now. I'll cut this out. Cool. So when you're talking about creating these materials for people who are newer to these concepts, how do you start to approach those pieces of content? Like, how do you decide what to write about? And then how do you make it so, how do you do what you do so well?
Oh.
That's a general concept question.
Oh man, that makes me feel like an imposter.
No. Should I rephrase that question? Because that wasn't my intention.
No. That's just my internal demons.
The C++ of your internals, yes.
Yes. I think like one way I approach content is I try to explain it to myself first. So for example, right now I'm creating content on AI, and it's such a new topic for me, but for a lot of other people as well who just want to kind of dive in. So then I'll think about the terminologies that are kind of confusing to me. Like for example, prompt versus token versus LLMs. What the heck is an LLM? Somebody explain it to me. And so I'll write those down as I'm like learning about it, and those kind of become like questions I want to answer in the blog post. And then as I'm learning, I'll make notes, and these are just notes that, you know, it's totally rough draft, I don't want to like use it. And then what I'll do is I'll compile all of these notes into like a blog post, and I'll make chat GPT do the hard work for me, refine it, clean it, correct the grammar, make it nice. And then I'll go through it and explain it like I'm five, you know, taking the same strategy. And think of a developer who's just completely new to AI, new to this field, and they have just learned about these keywords and they want to get started. So some common questions they would think of, some common terminologies, how to approach it, what is the first step, what is the next step, and where can they take it from here. That's usually been my approach, like teach it to myself first, think of the questions that come in my mind, write those questions down, create notes, convert that into a blog post, and then explain that to somebody who may be completely new or beginner. So break everything down for them. And that's usually been working really well. It creates content that is geared towards more beginners. So that is kind of the trade-off there. You know, you're not targeting the advanced level engineers there. But the idea is, who's your target audience for that blog? And for that blog, it would be new beginners. So I think when folks are creating content, they often, one question that always comes to some people's mind is, this kind of content is so saturated, why should I create another one? Especially something that is JavaScript or React related, because there's so many blog posts on it. But one thing that I talk about all the time is that, you know, even if you can help one person understand that topic, that is still a success. Like for example, React server components has been talked about so much. Oh my God, there's so much content. And it only came out like, what, 2 years ago or something like that. But it did not click to me until I actually heard the talk from Tejas Kumar at React Belgium. And that's when it started to like all make sense. And so that's the thing, right? Like even people who have been working with React for a long time may not be able to understand new topics, and your way of explaining may click with them as opposed to like the thousands of other blog posts. So people usually have like, people usually feel kind of held back in that way, like, you know, it's kind of saturated topic. But I would encourage everyone to think about just one person who you can influence and you can help, and I think that itself was a success.
I love it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that can get in our own way of feeling like I shouldn't write about this because there's all these articles about it, but it's going to find the right audience, and your way of explaining something is going to resonate with someone who another person, it just passes over their head, or they don't connect with it or whatever. And I think that's so important to always remember that, there's an audience for that. And there's so many different developers out there. And sometimes you get into, I do at least, a little bubble where you're like, ooh, everyone on Twitter is talking about this and everyone must understand it. And it's like, no, tons of people aren't even on Twitter, or tons of people like aren't going to learn about server components for 4 years. And so it's super important.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I love that point. The last one about, like people are not going to learn about this stuff for until 4 years when they actually have to start using it at work. And I think that's something that we forget usually, right? Like when we're making content as well, or like being on Twitter, because everybody has moved on from RSC and now it's the next, something else is the next new thing. Like, for example, React 18 came out 3 years ago and a lot of companies still haven't upgraded to it. So even if you want to make like React content, this is still a good time because a lot of people are still looking for that new content and are still discovering new features of React. So
Totally. And I think companies that have just invested, I feel like a bunch of companies just started using React with Redux, and maybe they're years away from that process of upgrading. And so, yeah, not everybody is just burning down everything they created in favor of refactoring or replacing things. So
yeah, exactly. The hot new thing.
The hot new thing. So I guess we're on the topic of the hot new thing. How are you feeling about how React is doing right now? Are you working with Next.js? You're working with server components a bit, I think, or where's that landing with you right now?
Yeah, I'm like an antique land now.
Explain.
If you go to React Dev's website and try to install React, the first thing they'll say is use React with Next.js or Remix. And I'm like, nope, I'm not using that. I would rather just do like Vite setup and have everything local instead of installing a framework. I don't know. I think one of the things, so I actually was doing Angular before I came across React at my first job. And one of the refreshing things about React that I found was, you don't need to have that full framework support. You can just put React in like whichever component you want and you're good to go. It's like such a lightweight library. And then you get to decide which modules you need for routing or for your state management. So I love that about React because it gives you a lot of flexibility. And I feel like the current approach is kind of going away from it. It's going towards a more framework oriented approach. I'm not a big fan of it, so I'm still using like Vite setup to get my React running locally, and I'll install whatever like state management I need. If I need, I'll use Redux. I think at work it's been very interesting because, like you said, enterprises move a lot slower. So we are not using React Server components. We're not using like Next.js at all. I don't even know if and when we'll use it. Like it's not in the scope right now. So yeah, I'm in antique world.
I love it. I love it. And I agree. I think it's tricky to tell a beginner developer who might be only used to working with JavaScript in the browser to fire up the terminal and install all this stuff. And that feels really daunting, I feel like. And you're pointing to kind of the core of what React is, which is components. So there's tons of ways of just starting from there. And Vite that's cool to hear that you're using that one. I think that's been a useful tool. Yeah.
Vite's been super helpful. Like one command, one line to get your React set up. So easy, so convenient. I love it.
Totally. I love it. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but I understand kind of why, but at the same time, it feels like there's a lot of room for Vite and other lower maintenance tools that don't lock you into something so huge. So I like what you said about when you go to the React docs and you say, nope, no dice. So not speaking of that at all, I want to honor the legend that I have here with me, the legend of dev jokes. And I want to give you the floor. Do you have a dev joke that you could tell me?
Oh, okay. So we were talking about React. So here's a React dev joke for you.
Okay.
You don't need to know the answer. I'll tell you the answer in like 3, 2, 1.
Okay. All right. I'll be patient.
Okay.
While I talk over you. Sorry.
Okay. Why do fish not like React?
Why?
Because they have hooks.
Amazing. That's why You're a celebrity because of those jokes. You told me one before the recording started, and I thought I was going to get that one. But your bench is so deep with dev jokes that that never would you give me the same one twice. How did all of that start? How did the dev joke thing start? And yeah, tell me about that as you MC and speak.
Yeah, I think like dev jokes is just my way of showing my real personality to people.
Yeah.
This is the real me. I don't know. I was following this like Instagram account called Programmer Humor. Great account if you like dev jokes. Love them. I don't maintain it. It's somebody else's account, but love it. And I used to send these memes to like my engineering friends, like my developer friends, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're so nerdy. I like your sense of humor." And I was like, maybe I should make this broader. Maybe I should share this with more people. And so I started sharing this on Twitter and like in conference talks, and people seem to love them. And people would tell me like more dev jokes as well in Twitter like Twitter threads. And I was like, okay, what do developers do with their skills? They make a GitHub repository. So I created a GitHub repository of the dev jokes. And now it's like, I don't know, such a big repository of dev jokes. And I love it. It's my real personality.
I love it so much. And I think something that I always think about when giving a talk or helping someone else prepare for one, and you do this automatically through dev jokes, is to, in the first minute or so, hook them in with something that is different or funny or vulnerable or whatever your kind of thing is. And I think that first minute is super important in a talk or in a presentation of any kind, because people are paying attention to their phone and they're like whatever they're doing and not the presentation. And that's not what happens when you give a talk. Everyone's like, what's happening? This is so exciting. So I think that's amazing.
I think that's another purpose of dev jokes. You know, it's just a trick to get people hooked. But also one thing that I've never talked about is like, it's also a trick for me to kind of calm the nerves down on the stage, because I'm like super anxious when I get up on stage. And then when I share some dev jokes, I'm like, okay, now we can do this. Let's do this.
Totally. I love that. Are there other rituals that you have before speaking or after speaking that you like to do?
Before speaking, I never eat food because I cannot eat food. Even if my talk is at like 4 o'clock, I will not eat breakfast or lunch that day. Yeah. So I request people to have my talks like earlier in the morning so I can be fed.
8 a.m. only, yeah.
No, I can't do that.
Too far. Maybe noon.
Too much optimization.
Totally.
Besides that, I don't actually have a lot of rituals. I think for me, just like practicing is very important, because I'm the kind of person who gets like very anxious on the stage, and I have like huge stage fright. So when I get up on the stage, I might forget everything. So I like practice until it becomes like muscle memory. One thing that I also do, which in case folks are not already doing, is using presenter view and writing notes in the presenter view. And that really helps in like helping your train of thought, especially if you lose it between slides. And it also has like the previous slide and the next slide. And I love that, because then you can tie the story together as you're talking through it. And those are just like some tricks I have to not forget what I'm talking about on stage. Because it has happened to me in my first talk at Apollo GraphQL's GraphQL Summit, where I was talking and I totally forgot and I lost my train of thought and I completely froze. I don't think anybody was able to tell, but I was just like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's easy for your brain to go totally blank. So that's a great tip.
Yeah.
When you're preparing, are you preparing alone? Are you recording yourself? Are you preparing in front of people? What does that look like?
I used to prepare in front of people when I was doing these talks initially. I think for GraphQL, especially like speaking at Apollo GraphQL's GraphQL Summit, the first conference that I gave, I was really nervous and I had never done a talk before. So I prepared a lot for that. So I had like a practice session with the GraphQL Summit's committee itself. I think Peggy Raises did my kind of like test walkthrough, and I talked about the content I was going to speak at. I was really nervous about it, so that was really helpful just to get it kind of like a first pass. I also presented that content in front of like folks at work, so just to get like a practice speak speaking engagement as well. One thing that I also recommend for folks who are new starting out speaking is like sharing the same content in a meetup, in a local meetup with a much smaller audience. I think smaller meetups are like such a friendly and inclusive place to get started. And also you can also gauge what kind of questions are there so you can prepare for your actual conference talk. So practice runs, speaking in front of a small crowd. One thing that I also do is like while I'm speaking, and if there are any questions that come up in my head, which I feel like audience could ask, I'll write that down and find an answer for it. And I'll usually include it in the appendix section. It has sometimes happened, like when I was giving a talk on accessibility, somebody asked me about one of the things, and I had that already as a slide in appendix section, and that really helps to kind of like, pre-prepare for the questions. So another tip there.
That's a great tip. I'm stealing that one. That's a good.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good one. I think the tip about speaking at a meetup too is super important because that sort of gives you a little deadline before the deadline as well, so that you can't put things off too much. And that's really nice too. I think every time you speak it or do that talk, I'm going to take that again. Every time you give that talk, it makes the talk better, just getting it into your bones. So I love that. Yeah. And that was your first talk at GraphQL Summit?
That was my first talk.
Whoa.
I was really, really nervous.
Yeah.
I think looking back at that talk, I did so poorly. But, for me, it was like such a big milestone. I'm super proud of that talk as well. Oh my God, giving a talk at such a big platform at GraphQL Summit about GraphQL and state management and not using Redux. Oh my God, what a big opinion to share at such a big stage.
I love it. That's no holds barred. Yeah, that's great. But you were right, Time has been a good teller of the things,
Yeah.
I love that. So when we're thinking about speaking and blogging and all of those content creation things, how do you keep the momentum going so that you keep doing that? You've had so many amazing talks. You've put out so much great content for people. How do you pull yourself out of your full-time job and normal life and all those things to make that happen?
Oh, that's really, really hard. That's something that I keep struggling with every now and then. I think for me, I feel like one thing that some folks do better than others is keeping a regular momentum going, whereas other folks may work in spurs of momentum and energy and excitement. So I feel like, honestly, like finding your kind of personality or like understanding your personality there is very important. I am the latter kind of person. I have a burst of excitement and then I'll put 20 blog posts out and then I'll be dead for 10 minutes. So
same, by the way.
Right? Right now, my last blog post was in November and I haven't written anything since. It's not that I'm not working on something else. I'm just busy with other stuff. So I feel like kind of knowing the personality that you are is very important because we kind of try to force ourselves into this regular period or this period of putting content out, and we're not the kind of person who likes doing that or may not have the excitement of writing a blog post every day. So I feel like first step is figuring out what works well for you, and then second is kind of scheduling your content accordingly. So if you love writing blog posts every week, do that, great for you. But if you're the kind of person who would do a big content chunk of content block and would rather schedule it out, I think that's a really great way of approaching a consistent content creation workflow. So some folks, what they do is they do batch recording or batch writing and schedule it out for a month or 2 months or whatever. So I know a lot of YouTube creators do the same thing as well, because it's very hard to create consistently if you're that kind of personality. So that's what I would do as well. So for example, right now I'm creating a bunch of videos and I'll just schedule them out 2 weeks or 3 weeks apart. So I feel like finding your personality is very important. Creating a schedule is very important. So for example, I think if your goal is to create one blog post a month versus one blog post a week, your schedule will look very different. So figuring out what your goal for content creation is very important. I used to have a blog post a week goal, and I figured out I'm not that kind of person. I won't have time for this. So I reduced it down to one blog post whenever I'm ready for it. I think setting expectations for yourself is like key there, because you kind of can beat yourself down for it, especially if you have like a full-time job and then happening life, which I totally have.
You do,
Don't.
I know. I follow you
I
on
don't.
Instagram.
Those are not instant posts, by the way. Those are scheduled content.
That's the thing. You fooled me. So yeah, you're living that design. That's great.
Yeah, scheduling for scheduling for life. That's, I think, my biggest take. Like, I think finding your personality, knowing what works for you, and then scheduling, fitting the schedule for your life, I think is helpful. Otherwise, you feel burnt out.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice and very kind to yourself advice, because I feel the same way about, you start to compare yourself to other people who just
Yeah.
seem like they have a bottomless energetic reserve to publish so much content, and I know that that's not really me. So
Yeah.
I think keeping that consistency, even if it's like once a month getting something out, is better than feeling like I didn't hit my goal of once a week, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna just quit entirely.
Totally.
I'll never write a blog post again. So
Totally. And I think you hit a really important point there about being kind to yourself, right? Like, we compare ourselves to others, and what we don't realize is like, maybe you have a full-time job and maybe you are like working really hard at your job. So your energy is kind of all spent there. And maybe at the end of the job, you don't really have a time for a blog post. And that's okay for that month. Like, maybe that's your priority this month. Maybe next month you'll put 2 blog posts out and maybe your work won't be as stressful. So that's totally okay. Like, be kind to yourself, and, like, posting content is great, but posting content just for the heck of posting content, I think that's shitty.
yeah,
Put
absolutely.
good content out there.
Totally. Yeah. And you don't want to, it's not just a numbers game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'll put out this, use your words, shitty blog just to do it, and like, no one wants to read your shitty blog. They want to write the
Exactly.
one where you're rested and you're excited about it and you feel like this is coming from a place of excitement and creativity versus like,
Yeah.
I'm just a factory of content spitting
Yeah,
out
right.
whatever junk comes out.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point, because like when you look at maybe some YouTubers who are just like putting content every week out, and I think YouTubers are honestly doing a much better job than me, for example, in terms of consistency. You can totally see which one it took them, like which is a good video versus which is like a video just for the sake of video, and you're really invested in the ones that are really good videos. You don't really care if they're posting like on the dot every week. What you care about is when they post a video, is this something you want to watch? So that's the kind of like goal that I target for, that if I'm putting content, I want to make sure it's good, something that I would want to read a year later. And I think your brand, like your personal brand, I feel like is more important in terms of quality as opposed to quantity. I know that some folks do go for quantity, and that's the goal you have, then totally go for it. But it may not work for folks who have like a burst of excitement and want to get some work done in some small amount of time as opposed to like a consistent schedule.
Totally. I love that. You are doing a lot of video stuff. How does that going compared to blogging? What types of things should someone who wants to create content as a video content creator think about? Your
I
face
think
is
video
funny.
feels, yeah,
About
like,
yeah.
that's how I feel about video. I feel like video content can be very intimidating, especially if you're gonna be like face on, as well, while like maybe talking code or just being face on, camera on. I think for video, I've kind of broken it down into steps. So blog post I feel like is a lot easier to write for me personally, as opposed to creating a video, mostly because I'm not that comfortable creating videos yet. So for me, for videos, I feel like because it's a longer time, I'll give myself a longer time as well. And if I'm the one editing my video, then it's even longer. So I'll start with creating an outline of what I want to talk about. And these will be just chapters. And then I'll talk about it. Like I'll write the code if I'm doing a code video, and I'll do all of like the technical work for it. Then I'll write the script for it. And then I'll record the audio of it first. And I think that's a tip that maybe you shared with me. So I'll record the audio first, and then I'll do like the code walkthrough. So this way audio and the code walkthrough are separate. So this way you're not like through the audio while you're like figuring out what the heck you were talking about or what the heck you're supposed to like do here, and you have a bug and you're like totally stuck. So I feel like separating those two helps in editing as well. And now you have two streams. You have a video stream where you're like talking through the content and you're much more confident because, you know, you've already got your content set. And then you have the voiceover where you can talk about what you're doing. And then in post editing as well, it really helps because now you can cut out like any spaces, any dead spaces, any errors or anything. And audio, like voiceover would work much better. So I usually follow the script that I've written down for voiceover when I'm recording the voiceover. And that helps me not like lose my train of thought. For editing, if it's a big video, I usually will have editing help from someone. And that just helps like offload most of that big work to someone else so I can get the video out faster because I'm a poor editor and my editing skills are not up to par at all. And it just helps to get the blockers removed, because for me that's a big one. And in terms of blog post, the script that you've written for the video can also turn as a really good source for the blog post as well. So ask ChatGPT to convert that into a blog post, edit it, and send it out. Use ChatGPT.
Just use ChatGPT and write a script. Have it do the voiceover for your for your video coming out of your mouth. Totally. Are there other AI tools that you're using alongside ChatGPT at all right now?
Not so much right now. So I've been exploring a video tool for editing videos, specifically from creating a video from just a script. And this is really helpful, especially when you don't want to put any like camera on or if you don't have any slides. That's something that I'm exploring right now. I don't have a final answer yet. I found something that's kind of close to what I need. But that's the only other one that I'm using besides ChatGPT. And DALL-E as well for image generation or image journey.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, I'm kind of blown away by all the AI stuff that's starting to get baked into all of these tools. Even this podcast software we're using right now will, once we're done, chop it up into chapters based on what we talk about just on the transcript. So it's kind of scarily accurate with what those chapters are called. So I like that. Whatever the robots want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to help me out, robots, I'm into it. Are there any things that you're working on at Slack right now at work that you can talk about?
Sure. At Slack,
yeah,
I'm doing something completely different from React. Well, actually not completely different from React. I'm using my skills to create an accessible experience at Slack. And I love it so much because I finally feel like I'm putting my engineering skills and my web development skills to a good use and helping people actually who have been marginalized and haven't really been like thought of when building front end, like cool front end experiences. So if people have been using Slack, they may have noticed that it has a new design. And I worked on that new design recently to make sure it was accessible for everyone, including when you spawn a new child window, which was kind of inaccessible, couldn't really tell which child window it was. We call it child windows. You wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But, a new window.
Sounds cool. I don't know.
Yeah, so at Slack, making an accessible experience for everyone, it's been so cool. It's been such a great learning experience. I learned more about HTML now than I've ever learned in my life.
Totally, I'm sure. And I love that you said that about creating something where you're taking all of your years of experience and putting that to really positive impact that will frustrate people less, that'll bring people their content in a more accessible way. I love that.
Yeah. I feel like finally I'm working to help someone instead of just helping the company. Which was really good.
Just making money and doing stuff like that. Yeah. Exactly. We love capitalism, but why not use it for some good? That's really cool.
Exactly.
That's so funny. I think that sounds like
Slack.
Yeah. That sounds like a good course as well. Just throwing that out there. A good accessibility course, putting together everything that you've learned. Are
Oh,
there
yeah.
features, or do you have an accessibility tip that other people can take to their own work?
Oh, absolutely. I think one biggest tip that I would offer is just using keyboard to navigate through your website. Just go through it, see if there are contents that you cannot access. If there are content you cannot access, there's like tons of resources on like MDN on why and that may be happening. I also have a conference talk. I'll link that as well. I talk about it as like 5 things you need to test for accessibility. Hugely simplified, but I think it's a great starting point. But one tip that I would give is please go through your website and use keyboard only to navigate through the site. And the reason is people who are using screen reader may not be using. Oh, look at that. People who are using like assistive technologies will definitely not be using a mouse, so the experience that we are the interfaces that we are experiencing may not be the same for them, and so you will be doing a huge favor if you just test your site by using keyboard. There's also tons of other things you could be doing, but I think that's a really great point to start.
I love that. I think particularly with forms, using a keyboard to test those forms, sometimes I'll just do it on a random website and be like, why are we jumping in this strange order? It's like first name and then zip code and then last name and email. I was like, oh, I can't do this. It's too stressful.
Exactly.
So,
and it's such an easy thing, right? Just like tab keyword. It's so important for people who even have motor disabilities. They might be using mouse as well, but using keyboard is like a way better experience. So just testing keyboard also will help a lot.
Totally. I love that. And we'll definitely link to that in the notes to your talk, because I know that's a banger of a talk. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, my friend, we have reached the end of our podcasting time together. I know. Where can we find you online? Tell us all the places.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Shruti Kapoor 08. 08 is my birth date, so please remember that.
Yeah, lock that in.
And on YouTube also at Shruti Kapoor 08. And I also have a site called shrutikapur.dev where you'll find all the resources, conference talks, blog posts that I just talked about as well, if you're interested in.
Amazing. Follow her on all the places. Shruti is amazing and she is the best. And I would be friends with her even in a world without web development. This is like such a nice moment to get to talk to you here. So thanks for doing it. Thank you for being part of the Last Tech Podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time. The Last Tech Podcast.